welcome to my Eclipse Java session. I'm Hendrik. I'm from Germany, from Dortmund. And yeah, I'm related to Java since even before I started studies. I already did Java, so yeah. All my work life, I did Java so far. And in the last years, I worked more and more together with the Eclipse Foundation in several Java projects like MicroProfile, JakartaEE, or where I'm heavily involved, Eclipse Adoptium. And so I decided to create a session about all the different topics of the Eclipse Foundation where somehow Java is involved. And maybe there was even some things you don't know about. So what else about me? I have my own company, which is called Open Elements, where I try to combine the topics open source and Java. And since this year, I'm a member of the Eclipse Foundation board of advisory. Yeah. Next to this, I love Star Wars, dogs, board games, and that, open source and Java. So, and to be fair, what I need to say is I'm using IntelliJ. and when I deploy applications, I from time to time deploy them on the Microsoft builds of OpenJDK, right? And when I create an application, I use Spring Boot. So you might ask yourself, wait, what? So he's using IntelliJ, he's doing things on the Microsoft builds of OpenJDK, he's creating applications with Spring Boot. How the heck can he talk about Eclipse, right? Yeah, we will see. So that will be definitely one part of the session. So I will start to talk about some of the main projects, or not, maybe not the main project, but some big projects within the Eclipse Foundation and the Eclipse ecosystem, like the platform and the IDE, JakartaEE, MicroProfile, Adoptium. I will talk about the Eclipse Foundation in general, and maybe after that we can ask the question how somebody that is using tools from like Microsoft and Spring can talk about why Eclipse loves Java. Okay, so let's start with the session. And since we're going to an Eclipse, we need our security classes on. And the first thing we would like to talk about is the Eclipse projects. And when I Googled it, I found like today the Eclipse project is a top-level project that contains the Eclipse platform and the Eclipse JDT and many more. So there are so many things in this sentence that just create more question marks than answers, right? So what is a top-level project? What is Eclipse platform? What is Eclipse JDT, right? So let's have a look at that and try to find that out. So in general, the story starts in 1997. And not only the story of the Eclipse IDE, but of the whole Eclipse community and the Eclipse Foundation. Because in that year, the first version of the Visual Age for Java was released by IBM, which was a kind of IDE that was created by IBM. It was not open source, it was not free. You were able to buy it like for $99. You get 3 CDs, one for Windows, one for OS2, and one with video tutorials on it. That was the fancy stuff in that time. And yeah, as you can see, that evolved over around 4 years, and then in 2001, the last version of it has been released, which was like version 4.0. And I really found some screenshots of that version online, and that's really interesting to see, right? Because it really, I mean, it don't look like a modern IDE our days, but I would have assumed that it looks way older than it really is, especially since you have this visual component. Yeah, okay, it's called Visual Age, so it makes sense that it has visual components, but you really had what you see is what you get editor in it, for example. And well, I'm talking about this Visual Age for Java because that has been open sourced in 2001 by IBM under the name Eclipse. And that is when the name Eclipse appeared for the first time. Because what we today know as the Eclipse IDE was this visual aid for Java that was developed by IBM. And this is how then the first version of Eclipse looked like. Looks a little bit more modern, still not like we use it today. So at that time, there was no Eclipse Foundation like we know it today, right? So instead of that, and to have a really vendor-neutral open source project, what happened was that a board has been established, and in this board there were 9 members. So Red Hat was one member, IBM was a member, and some other companies. Like it was like 9 companies. There were even some of them I never heard of them. And the interesting thing is that 2 years later, there were already over 80 stewards of this IDE. So having this IDE as an open source project that really heavily evolves as open source was a real success. And based on this, there was no other way than creating a real foundation around it. And that was when the Eclipse Foundation has started, which was like in January 2004. And so the Eclipse Foundation was really started around a Java product, right? So without the Java IDE, without Java, there wouldn't be any Eclipse Foundation today. And when the Eclipse Foundation started, there were some goals that are defined. And I assume, or I would say, the goals are still the same today, right? It should be an independent, non-profit organization or corporation. It should be vendor neutral. It should be as open, as transparent as possible. And it should help to create a community, which is called like the Eclipse community in this case, around the foundation. And internally, this IDE was based on a kind of modular framework. So it was not only the IDE that was coming out of one repository. Even at that time, it was designed as a modular product. And this modular product, the base of it was the so-called platform that you can use to create your own application. And the Eclipse IDE is only one possible application that can be created out of the Eclipse platform. Maybe some of you have used it to create other applications that are based on this Eclipse platform. Or maybe you are using not the Java IDE, but you are using Eclipse for C, C++ development. In that case, again, you have the platform with some additional plugins. Because when you use the Java IDE, again, it's really like having the Eclipse platform together with the Eclipse JDT, the Java development tools on top of it, which is just a plugin that allows you to create Java applications. And as said, I'm using IntelliJ, right? So I'm not that deep into the platform, but if you are interested in that and how the Eclipse IDE and the platform and the Java development tools and so on will evolve in the near future, because currently there's a lot of power going into those projects and a lot of new people working on those projects. There are at least today 2 sessions about it, which is like the Eclipse IDE and the RCP platform, where you can see like what is planned for the future, and then another one which is like a kind of both, where you can meet the committers and the contributors and discuss with them. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, that is what most of you know, right? Because this is more or less how it looks like today. And when talking with people, you often hear things like, oh, I don't use IntelliJ, I don't use Eclipse anymore, I use Visual Studio Code or IntelliJ. But when looking at the numbers, so the last version, I mean, the last version was released some days ago, so that is not fair. But the version that was released this summer has already over 2 million downloads, and those are the downloads from the Eclipse page, right? So next to this, it is hosted in some other pages where we do not have any download numbers. So this is really a huge number. And last week, I was in Regensburg, which is like a 2-hour drive from here at university, giving a lecture regarding software development. And there in the room, I asked the people, and 40% of the students are using Eclipse. right? So even today, where we have so many different IDEs that people can use, mostly half of it are using Eclipse. So since we have more topics in the Eclipse Foundation that are interesting for Java developers next to the IDE, we need to stop here and move to the next topic, which is MicroProfile. So now we really moving forward to the year 2016. And in 2016, enterprise development in Java really sucked, right? So it was totally pain as a Java enterprise developer because the development of JakartaEE stuck. It was super bloated with a lot of things nobody wanted to have, and nothing was moving forward. So there were different specifications for JakartaEE, where, for example, Oracle was a steward. They are not moved forward at all. Even some of the code, like the TCKs, were not open sourced, and the umbrella spec was not moving forward. And that was exactly where MicroProfile come into play, because the idea of MicroProfile then in 2016 was, to have something similar than JakartaEE. It was not JakartaEE, it was JavaEE. Something similar than JavaEE, which is, way more flexible because it's way smaller, and based on that, it can really move forward and being a real open source project. That was the vision, right? And based on that, there were a lot of discussions. So how do we define MicroProfile at all? What should it be? Like, should it be a subset of JavaEE? Should it be something new? What parts maybe are needed next to things we have in JavaEE? So in JavaEE, there was, for example, no configuration API or something like that at all. And where should the project be hosted? I assume the last question most of you know where it's hosted. But at the beginning, it really started with the a forum in Google Groups, and I just did this screenshot. This is about a discussion like what should be part of MicroProfile, right? And so there's, for example, one answer from me where I say I don't want to have the servlet API into it because we have JakartaEE, and if we want to have it small, we don't need a servlet API. So there were really a lot of those open discussions about what will MicroProfile be. And another important topic where to host it and what will become the home of MicroProfile. And there the answer came half a year later. Here you can see it like in February 2017, where Kevin officially announced the repositories of MicroProfile. And as you can see, they are all under the Eclipse team at GitHub, because at that point, MicroProfile decided to become a working group and a top-level project at the Eclipse Foundation. And so one of the points they wanted to achieve is to be more flexible, faster than JakartaEE. And when having a look at the releases of MicroProfile, you can really see it, right? Because while in JakartaEE we had like one release all 4 years, here we have like several releases each year. And even while it's getting like the last 2 years slower, that is more or less just because a lot of it has already been achieved, right? And we don't need to be that fast anymore. But especially at the beginning, the innovation of MicroProfile and the things that are happened are super fast. So today we have version 6.1 out, and that is really hot, right? Because that was released 4 days ago. So 4 days ago, the tag has been created in GitHub, and I just give you an overview what is part of MicroProfile. When we move to JavaEE and JakartaEE, you will see that that one contains way more modules. I would call those modules because each of them is an individual module that can somehow be combined with the other modules over APIs, but each of those modules has a kind of own spec and it kind of own releases. And as you can see in MicroProfile 6.1, even if it's a minor release, we have updates in OpenTelemetry, metrics, and the config API. And one really great thing about MicroProfile is, if you want to play with it, we have this great MicroProfile starter at the Eclipse page that easily helps you to set up a MicroProfile project. again, we do not have that much time for each topic, so we need to move forward to the next topic, which is JakartaEE. And yeah, I mean, I already talked about JakartaEE now several times, especially when talking about the MicroProfile. Before Java EE, or before JakartaEE became a project of the Eclipse Foundation, there was Java EE that was developed within the JCP, which is the Java community process, which is the idea of having a neutral home, a neutral place where companies can define specifications and projects together. And while that is a great idea, and for several projects, like, for example, the Java Bean validation, that worked quite well. For other projects, it was horrible. Why was it horrible? Because so when you had a project, you always had like one leader of the project. And those leader was responsible to where to host the project, when to do a release, and so on and so on. And if the leader wasn't interested in the project anymore and didn't do anything, the project becomes stuck. And that happened to several of the Java EE projects and to the so-called Umbrella project where everything comes together. So as said, that was not the best time for Java enterprise developers. And it really felt like Oracle totally lost the interest in this Java enterprise section. But happily, some years ago, in September 2019, it was announced at Java 1 in that year, Oracle announced that they will submit Java EE and all sub-projects of Java EE, all specifications, to the Eclipse Foundation. And that was a moment where Java EE became JakartaEE. So if you never know what is the difference between Java EE and JakartaEE, at the end, it's really like that. We changed the name based on some things I will talk in a minute about. We changed the logo, but it's like the successor of the project, right? And one good thing is that when it came to the Eclipse Foundation, to a real open source foundation, it was open from day one. And that does not only mean that the code was open, that means that even decisions that are before that just done by one company or hidden became open. One very good example for that is the logo. So who knows how the logo of JakartaEE has been created? Any idea? So there was really an open voting, and everyone was able to submit logos for JakartaEE. So I have some of them with me, like logos that haven't become the official logo of JakartaEE. But yeah, I mean, you're laughing about the ape, right? So, but I really like that one or that one, right? So there are really like, I don't say that I dislike the boat, so the official one, but as you can see, there was really like an open voting on it. Everybody was able to submit a logo, and the good thing is, so I Googled them like 3 days ago or something like that. So they're still online. You can still see all the logos and the outcome of it. And why has the name changed? I mean, having a good logo is one point. Why does the name change? Because Java is trademarked by Oracle, and the Eclipse Foundation cannot just use Java like it is in Java EE, so based on it. A new name was needed, and it became, at the end it was JakartaEE. So when coming from Java EE, one thing that we can definitely see is that after the migration, a lot of releases happened, way more than within the JCP. You can still say, oh, wait, it was 2017, right? And here we have a huge gap. But that is based on the transition. A lot of legal stuff was needed, and so on. The repositories has been created. The community need to move, and so on, and so on, and so on. And after that, you can see that there was more or less one release each year. And I mean, that is what it wants to be, right? It don't want to be MicroProfile, where you, at the best, want to have several releases each year. Having something that is specified and solid and should be used like, I don't know, in 10 years, like it is used today, because it specifies, having one release each year is still fast. And next to this, there was a huge problem, right? The namespace problem. Because everything from JakartaEE was under the JavaX package, like JavaX, Servlet, whatever. And sadly, the Eclipse Foundation and Oracle didn't get it arranged that Oracle was able to use this namespace and mutate things under this namespace. In theory, the Eclipse Foundation was allowed to use that namespace, but disallowed to change anything under it. So by keeping JavaX, yeah, you have the spec, but the spec won't change, right? And if you want to go to the future, you need to change it. And that's why there was this hard decision, and with JakartaEE 9, or starting from JakartaEE 9, everything is now under this Jakarta namespace. And whoever worked with JakartaEE or Jakarta applications know that this can end in some pain, even if you are working with a Spring application, right? Because when having a look at all the different modules of JakartaEE, so all the different specs, several of them are, for example, used in Spring 2. So even the Spring framework needed to change, like, for example, for the Servlet API, which is used in Spring, needed to change internal namespaces of their dependencies. So that was really, yeah, a huge workload to do this internally of the API and then to have it done in all the transitive dependencies like Spring or your enterprise application. But anyway, currently JakartaEE 11 is in development. You can see it here. That will contain a new module, which is the data module. I don't know that much about it. I think it's is it the NoSQL thing in it? Or it's regarding NoSQL. And as you can see, a lot of specifications has been updated to work with JakartaEE 11 that will come out in future. Okay, so we had the IDE, we had MicroProfile, we had JakartaEE. The next big working group or project within the Eclipse Foundation when thinking about Java is Adoptium, right? And I have a world premiere for you today. Without sound. What's that? Okay, we have some sound problems. Anyway, so we created an Adoptium trailer for conferences and other stuff. And this is the first time that it's shown to any audience. Sadly, without sound. Sorry about that. Yeah, Adoptium. So, from my point of view, Adoptium arrived at the perfect moment in time, because with the new roadmap, the new release train of the OpenJDK and all these new Oracle licenses, there were a lot of rumors, there were a lot within the Java develop community. People are talking about, oh, Java won't be free anymore in future. People were afraid that we will end in something like that, like having a friction between different Java versions, like if you create an application and you run it on the Oracle JDK based on all the changes and all the private closed repositories, you won't be able to run it, I don't know, on the Red Hat OpenJDK build or maybe on the Azure builds. And that was really a big problem. And happily, some companies, especially in the beginning, Microsoft and Red Hat, joined forces to create Adopt OpenJDK, which then become the Adoptium working group, to create an open OpenJDK distribution that is totally vendor neutral because it's coming from Eclipse And this distribution is named Tamarin. So when I'm talking about that, mostly people ask me, why is it called Tamarin? Why is it not called Adoptium, right? Or why is it not called Adopt OpenJDK? So from my point of view, Tamarin is a perfect name for a runtime. Who knows why? So let's start with that. Point one. What else? So why is it the perfect name for a Java runtime? Yeah? Yeah, that's a good name then in general, but I mean, look at that. Tamarin is the chemical element that is the nearest one to caffeine. What could be a better name for a Java runtime than Tamarin, right? And I hope it's not only the name, I hope it's more, that it's the mostly downloaded Java runtime in the world. That is the number I took this earlier today, and that is so unbelievable. I mean, Mike showed it already in the keynote today, so that is just a picture of the keynote. So with Tamarin, we really have a huge success in the Eclipse Foundation, having the most open, the only vendor neutral, and the mostly used Java runtime in the world. That is just awesome. But, and that is great, since we are open, we do not say like, okay, that is the only one that is available, you need to use that. What we are doing is, at Adoptium, for example, we have the so-called marketplace, where we provide a lot of different Java distributions from a lot of different vendors next to the neutral one that we at Eclipse Foundation are building. And yeah, as you can see, those distributions are coming from people that work together on creating Tamarin, that learn based on creating Tamarin, and which allows them to create their own distributions. I assume, I cannot say it for sure, it's an assumption, that working on Adoptium, working on Tamarin, helped Microsoft to build and distribute their Microsoft OpenJDK binaries. Without having Adopt OpenJDK, without having Adoptium and Tamarin, that would be way more work for Microsoft to do it. And all those that we provide at the marketplace have one very important thing in common, which is they are all tested by Aquavit, which is another very important Java project that we have at the Eclipse Foundation, where not that many know about. Because Aquavit is a project that is used to test and benchmark OpenJDK builds. So by using Aquavit, you can check if an OpenJDK-based build, like any of our Tamarin releases, is really enterprise ready. There is the Oracle TCK that you can license in Oracle, so that, and by running the TCK, Oracle verifies that you are Java compatible. I have no insights into that because to have it, you need to sign so many documents. You don't want to do that. But next to this, where I have no insights about the quality, here we have a huge framework, a huge test library with so many tests. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of tests that are part of Aquavit, that are all open, and that allow us to really verify that a build is enterprise ready. Funny story, when talking about the OpenJDK, you see here that the OpenJDK contains about 9,000 tests, right? And we execute all of them. The OpenJDK only executes tests of tier 1. So the tests are defined between tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in Aquavit, all those tests are executed for every build. In the OpenJDK builds, that is not happening. And one interesting thing that we are doing is when executing tests, that we use tests from other applications, like, for example, Derby, which is a totally in Java written database. And what we are doing in Aquavit is we execute with the build JDK that should be tested all the Derby builds, all the Derby tests, and check if they are all green and in time with our build that is tested. And by doing so, next to the manually written benchmarks and unit tests for Java runtimes, we can even use things like Tomcat, like the MicroProfile TCKs, like, for example, Derby, and execute all those tests against binaries to check that they are enterprise ready. And putting all the things together, Adoptium, or in that case Tamarin, is not only the mostly downloaded Java runtime, it's even the most open one with a totally open build chain, starting from open source sources, open source build scripts, going over an open CI server, running open Aquavit tests, running some TCK tests that are sadly closed, and then uploading binaries at GitHub so that everything without the TCK from start to end is open. And I have a second word premiere. I don't need sound for that one. But what we did, especially for the EclipseCon, is we have a store now. Under store.adoptium.net, you can buy Adoptium shirts, you can buy Adoptium backpacks, cups, and so on. And for EclipseCon, we have a 10% discount. So if you need Adoptium merch, you should buy it today. Excuse me? Next slide. Okay, so we've seen the Eclipse IDE, we've seen Tamarin, we've seen the enterprise framework, and now let's combine all that together, right? With having these three parts, we have everything that you need to really create enterprise Java applications. You have an IDE that you can use, we have a runtime where your application can be based on, and we have enterprise frameworks to create huge enterprise applications. And all that can be used for free. Based on that, it can be easily used in education and in enterprise. And especially that it can be used in education is, from my point of view, a big win. As said, I talked with a lot of students. They told me, hey, we are using the Eclipse IDE, which is great. Especially when you use things like Maven projects or something where you really have the freedom of choose, so somebody can use a paid IDE, but can even use Eclipse. We have, with JakartaEE and MicroProfile, well-documented and stable IPEs that are great for students to learn coding because they do not need to know any implementation details. They just need to know the IDE APIs and work with them. And the same for Tamarin. It can be easily downloaded, distributed to all machines, for example, in a university. It has a super open community that already helps universities to get into it. But on the other hand, it can be used in enterprise too, right? So there are thousands of developers on the market that knows those tools. So if you create an enterprise application by using those tools, you will find people that know about it. The Eclipse Foundation, especially in the last months and years, security is becoming a more and more important topic for the Eclipse Foundation. And you can see this in the Java projects, like when audits are done, for example, for Tamarin, to see that it's really secure. There was an awesome topic about that on Monday regarding all the security stuff that happens in Adoptium. And one special thing is there are even commercial support. While it's free, you can get commercial support, at least for JakartaEE and for Tamarin. And based on that, I can just say, you know, things like IntelliJ learned from Eclipse a lot. And I assume without the open Eclipse IDE, IntelliJ wouldn't be the same as it is today. Microsoft, as I already said, learned how to build open JDK binaries by working together with other companies in Adoptium. And as said, Spring Boot internally uses JakartaEE. So I think now we can easily answer that question, right? Because all that is somehow linked to Eclipse Foundation. And with the Eclipse Foundation, we just have awesome tools that you can really use to educate the next developers and together with them create a nice and open community, what we are here. So I'm sadly over time, just 2 more slides. Next to those projects, when looking at the Eclipse Foundation, where 15 working groups currently hosted, 12 of them use Java. So most of the Eclipse working groups are based on Java. Within those working groups, we have 400 projects, so 400 like repositories in Git or GitHub, however you want to define it. And over 300 of them use Java. So even in parts where you do not assume that Java is used within the Eclipse Foundation. So in the Eclipse Foundation, Java is more or less really used everywhere. And based on the project we've seen, I would say it's really become a cornerstone of the Java ecosystem in many different places. And I think those are the 2 most important conclusions out of it. And I assume that in future it will even become more. And Java and Eclipse will, become more important couple than they are today. Thank you.